Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Hocanetto, and this is my presentation on creating a girls' wrestling program at Fort Morgan Middle School. I hope you all enjoy, and I'm going to be beginning now as if I was talking to my administrator and athletic director. Thank you, Mr. Unrein. Thank you, Mr. Dievlin, for the time that you've taken to listen to this opportunity that Fort Morgan Middle School has to create a brand new girls' wrestling program. Oops. What has wrestling done for me, and why do I care? Wrestling has been a family affair, starting with my dad and my uncles, and the joys and lessons that I've learned as a wrestler, and also my siblings, and what my son and my daughter is now beginning to experience through their wrestling program and their experiences in wrestling. So, um, with that being said, this is something that's very near and dear to me. I've wrestled since I was in kindergarten all the way up, and I've been participating in ever since. Over over 30 years. I feel really old now. And this is something that my family has really enjoyed with multiple state championships. I myself had all conference honors. And this is something that I not only want to share and pass down these lessons, these trials, tribulations, and the other lessons and the taste of sweet victory to future generations, but also to my daughters and the daughters of this community and have a fair shake at wrestling only girls. So, opportunities for girls in athletics here in Fort Morgan Middle Schools. As the head wrestling coach, I've seen unprecedented growth in the wrestling program and improvement, not just from the boys, but also the girls. When I first started as an assistant coach here in Fort Morgan Middle School, our numbers were somewhere in the mid to low 20s. Um, and we would have maybe one girl come out, maybe. And since then, we've seen huge growth where we've grown since I've taken over the program, where we're now in the 60s, mid to high 60s. We've cracked 70 twice, 2 consecutive years, this current year and last year. And it's really just taken off, and it's been really, really fun to watch and to participate in. And as the head coach, it's been something that's been really cool to watch the girls specifically, because 4 years ago, things hadn't really changed, where it'd be 1 to 2 girls would come out, and sometimes they'd finish the season, sometimes they wouldn't. Um, and Usually it was one of those things where it was like, oh, cool, we have some girls out, nice. Whereas 3 years ago, we went from 1 to 2 girls to 3 girls. Last year, we went from 3 to 7. And this year, we went from 7 to 16, and we finished with 13. So every year, we're looking at doubling our numbers, and it's been something really cool to see. And not only are we doubling our numbers every year, but this year we had our first two league placers in the two young ladies. I won't give their names just because I do know this is going to be going out to some of my classmates. But in the middle there, we have our 95 pounder, who was a league runner up, who wasn't even the varsity wrestler at 95 pounds. And then our very first girls varsity wrestler at 85 pounds, she took third this year. So that was something that was really cool. And again, one of those things as a wrestling coach that I try to really try to pound home for my wrestlers is that it doesn't matter what it says on paper, that the rankings don't matter. What matters is going and stepping on the mat, because anything can happen at any given time. Anybody can get got. So that's something that we saw this year at the league tournament, where the young lady who was a runner-up actually pinned my varsity wrestler in 13 seconds. And I was just like, cool. That was fun. So it was something that was really cool. And these young ladies also helped us win our fourth consecutive league tournament. And the one on the bottom actually scoring us points for our team, and the young lady in the middle actually prevented other teams from scoring points, as she was a JV wrestler who placed and kept other kids from scoring points. So that was pretty cool to see. So other opportunities we have for girls in athletics. and this is something that, again, this is not me um, trying to be purposely negative or assuming that there is some kind of evil intent with, but this is just something that I've noticed, that our girls do not have the same opportunities as our boys. Like I said, I don't think this is something that is been derived or schemed. It's just the way that it is for whatever the reason is. And I just think that that's something that we can do and we have the opportunity to change moving forward. Currently, we have each gender has 5 sports. If we count wrestling as a co-ed sport for both boys and girls to participate in, and then co-ed football also is a co-ed sport. Though in the time that I've been a middle school football coach, I've only seen one girl participate, and she didn't last very long. I'm sure we have had other girls, but they're just few and far between. So the numbers that I counted, as far as varsity athletes being able to be on the court at any one time, is what you see over there on the in the red. Um, and so you have girls volleyball. You can have 6 kids at one time. Girls basketball 5. Track is the real big one. That's the one that provides the absolute most opportunities for our athletes, both boys and girls, where you have anywhere between 52 and 64 varsity athletes can compete, because there's that many different varsity slots as far as events that can be at any particular track meet. Co-ed wrestling, we have 21 varsity spots available because we have 21 weights. Boys and girls cross country is a little bit interesting because you can have 4 to 5 scorers, according to the middle school cross country coach. And it just kind of depends on the meet, how big it is, and what they're allowing to have score. Everybody can participate just like you can in co-ed wrestling, where we can have that many kids participate depending on the meet. If they will allow us. Recently, our league has been capping our numbers, where they won't let me take more than 40 or 50 kids. And when I have a team that's flirting with 70 the last 2 years, um, as far as how many I'm taking, because it's hasn't ever been that high, mainly because of injury and eligibility and stuff. But I have that many kids in the room, so it's been something that's been kind of interesting seeing some of that stuff as well. And then co-ed football, again, predominantly been dominated by the boys. I haven't seen a varsity athlete in middle school that was a girl in football as of yet. I'm not saying it never will happen. That's just something I haven't seen yet to this point. And so, as you can see at the bottom there, you have the boys have 106 opportunities for varsity athletic spots, and the girls have 80. Now, that's a pretty substantial number, but that's also over the course of the entire school year. So, if you break it down by quarter, the boys have about 26, 27 opportunities per quarter, whereas the girls per quarter actually have a higher opportunity, but that's only because they can participate in 3 quarters of athletics, not 4. Um, but as far as total opportunities, the girls only get 75% of the opportunities that the boys currently enjoy. And then what I was alluding to earlier. We have boys football and girls, and then boys and girls cross country in the first quarter. Then for the girls, they have volleyball, and then boys and girls cross country. And I have an asterisk there because those are where boys and girls can both compete at the same time, not against each other, but they can compete at the same time. Then second quarter for boys, we have boys basketball. And then the second quarter for girls, we don't have anything. And again, like I said earlier, this is not anything to cast blame or anything like that. This is just an observation that I have made. And this is also something that is not unique to Fort Morgan Middle School. From my understanding, this is very common across a lot of middle schools, not just in our league, but also schools in other leagues where there is not an opportunity for girls to participate in sports during the second quarter. Then we have co-ed wrestling in the third quarter, and then we have for the girls we have girls basketball and co-ed wrestling, and then in the fourth quarter we have track and field. Again, that double asterisk pointing out that there are boys and girls participating at the same time, but not co-ed. They're not participating against each other. Now we're going to pause and we're going to hold that thought real quick because I'm going to circle back to it at the very end here. But I'm going to bring up some things that we need to talk about as far as why girls and boys should not be competing against each other, because it diminishes the opportunities for girls, and it's also a safety issue. So first, we're going to talk about why wrestle. Why? I mean, why do we have boys or girls wrestling? Well, it's because as human beings, this is something that we fundamentally do. As a parent, I've wrestled with all of my kids, not just because I'm a wrestler, but just because this is something what we do. I'm not saying I'm like working like, half Nelsons and pinning my kid and being like, rah, like that. No, it's just kind of stuff that we do. Like, again, when I'm talking about wrestling, I'm talking about the restraint and pinning down of my opponent. Now, my children are not necessarily my opponents, but it's just something fun that we do. It's something that, according to this article that I have listed down at the bottom here, that we as humans, we do all across the world. It's something that it is not unique to just here in the U.S. or with the ancient Greeks or the Chinese or the Russians or somebody out of South Africa or Egypt or wherever. This is something that is fundamentally human. You see some kind of wrestling all over the world where you see restraint happening of an opponent, and you either pin down or make them submit and you're not actually striking or trying to cause physical harm to your opponent. That's something that's very unique to wrestling, but it's not unique to human beings around the world. Something we all do, and it's something that's actually kind of interesting. It's unifying as a species. And it's just something that I find very wholesome, and just it just brings a smile to my face. I can't help but smile when I talk about this. Why do we wrestle continued? The ancient Greeks referred to wrestling as pale, which translates to gate of truth. And it's a beautiful analogy for wrestling because wrestling is unique, whereas other sports that I've coached, where I have I've coached soccer where I can hide an athlete, or football I can hide a weaker player, or baseball you can hide somebody in right field or something like that. And in wrestling, you can't do that. You can't scheme away the weaknesses of your team. Every wrestler must wrestle. If they're on varsity, they're going to wrestle. Um, and you can't hide those athletes. And the truth about that wrestler is going to be revealed to everyone who's watching. What kind of wrestling style does that athlete have? Do they tend to overcome a deficit during a match? Do they come back from behind? Are they losing, and can they pin their opponent and get a victory even though they were losing 10-1 or 10-0? Or are they one of those wrestlers that dominates the match from beginning to end and that can grind down their opponent over the course of a match? Or do they get fast pins? That is something that we find out over the course of a match. Also, we find out what kind of person that wrestler is. How do they win? Do they win with grace? How do they lose? Do they win? Do they lose with dignity? And that's something that we get to see as spectators, as coaches, and as other wrestlers. That wrestling reveals the content of a wrestler's character, and it's something that we can develop in the wrestling room, and it's something that is revealed on the mat during competition. And that's something that I find very refreshing and very something that I'm, as a coach and as a wrestler, very proud to be a part of. Now, the benefits of girls wrestling in our middle school program. One of the many benefits, and something that we will immediately see in the next several years, is the growth of our high school program, which is still in its infancy. It's only been going on for 3 years. Colorado girls wrestling has only been happening for 6. And it's interesting, one of the pioneer pilot school districts was actually Yuma, which is in our middle school league. So that's something that I think we have an opportunity at Fort Morgan Middle School to pilot a girls' middle school program and kind of keep that pride of wrestling here on the plains of Colorado. And I think that it's something that we have an opportunity to help these young ladies not just experience this sport at the middle school level, but help grow and enjoy it at the high school level as well. After talking to Mr. Myers and several other staff members, participation in athletics at FMMS is down. Um, Not so much in wrestling. I'm not for sure why, because I haven't been coaching football and I've been recruiting like a turd anymore. But there's been a school-wide decrease in athletics, and this I think is one opportunity that we have to kind of take that trend that's heading this way and fix it and have it going that way. Through the creation of a girls wrestling program by adding 21 extra opportunities for females to have a varsity spot, where they are safe and they feel connected to their teammates, which, by the way, is very, very unique in girls wrestling that I've been noticing just this year alone, having 13 girls on the team. I remember as a wrestler, and I watched the boys. We from when I was in wrestling to what I'm seeing right now, we behave pretty similarly, where we're establishing a pecking order and we're hard on each other and things like that. But these young ladies, they are much more supportive of each other than I would say the boys are. And they bond in a totally different way, whereas boys will tease each other and do this, that, or whatever, but they'll braid each other's hair. And that's a bonding thing that these girls get to experience. That as a boy, I was never able to experience. Not saying that I was super interested in braiding my teammates' hair, but that physical interaction, it's intimate, and it's something that these girls are actually bonding on the way to wrestling meets and at wrestling meets when they help each other do that and to keep their hair out of their face. And so that's something that is pretty interesting that I've been noticing, and I think will continue to help girl wrestling um, grow here at the middle school, which will again increase participation in athletics here at Fort Morgan Middle School. I've also had several conversations with different girls here at the high school and also at the middle school. I know my daughter went out for wrestling for the first time this year, and I was talking to her because she was our manager for 3 years there, and I asked her if she could have had the opportunity to wrestle girls, would she have gone out in middle school? And she said, yeah, she probably would have, just like she is doing so right now at the high school. I've asked several other girls that are out currently at the high school level, and I asked them why didn't they go out in middle school, and they said because I had to wrestle boys. And I also have a manager that's helping us out right now. She's been amazing and super helpful. But I asked her if she was going to wrestle only girls, would she have gone out? She said absolutely. And her dad's one of my assistants, and he said, yeah, I wouldn't mind having my daughter wrestle. I'm not going to have her wrestle now because I don't want her to wrestle boys. So there's definitely a barrier here that we currently have that's preventing girls wrestling from growing more so than it is now. And I even have a girl that almost quit because she didn't want to wrestle the boys anymore, and she's only wrestling in tournaments that have girls only brackets. So I definitely think that having these girls wrestle boys is a barrier, and if we take that barrier down and only have these girls wrestling other girls, girls wrestling is going to grow, and I'm very curious to see how quickly it's going to grow here at Fort Morgan Middle School. So some other benefits to having a girls only team and increasing physical and increasing our girls program is going to be improved physical fitness and improved health, both short and long term. So, according to the Women's Sports Foundation in 2020, this article talked about girls who are physically active, especially in sports, have improved physical fitness, lowered body fat composition, and improved mental health, which again makes sense as a PE teacher and as a coach, knowing that when we are physically active, we release hormones that actually help us manage stress. And that is going to be a thing that's definitely going to help with mental health. And again, all the other benefits that we know about lowered body fat composition and physical fitness. They also found that young girls in childhood and adolescence that were active in sports and were physically active have a much lower risk for breast cancer and cardiovascular disease. Now, that's including those who then, as adults, are not as physically active, which is crazy because breast cancer and cardiovascular disease are the top two leading causes of death in women in this country. And something else that they're finding is that these young ladies who were physically active in their youth and adolescence are more likely to be physically active as adults, which again continues to lower the likelihood of breast cancer and cardiovascular disease. So it's one of those. It's a really cool kind of just cycle of success here with physical fitness in youth and adolescence into adulthood and long term physical health risks, which have been lowered significantly due to the increase in physical activity. Now, there's also improved academic performance and attendance that has been directly linked with the same study from the Women's Sports Foundation that draws a direct correlation between the number of hours trained during the week and academic performance. And so that's something that's really interesting. So basically, what this study was talking about within this article is that the more these female athletes trained, the higher their GPA would climb. And the same thing with their performance on tests, it would continually go up. And then they would also have better attendance. One study that this article quoted was out of North Carolina. They had academic attendance improve by more than 40% of female athletes over their non-athletic peers. So this is one more reason why we need to have another opportunity for female athletics in Fort Morgan Middle School. Another reason for getting girls wrestling specifically into Fort Morgan Middle School is that it increases the amount of leadership opportunities, both short term and long term. The Women's Study Foundation's article talked about that these young ladies that were in athletics were less likely to consume drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, and would lead by example amongst their peers. And their peers would also not participate in these negative choices because these girls were making these positive health choices. So, and then another thing that they were talking about, another fact that they found is that these young ladies felt more connected within their community, which again, we're talking about some of the different stuff that they do, like braiding the hair and how they were bonding as a team, which makes sense. That these young ladies felt more connected in their communities, especially when they had a much higher positive social interaction with their peers, and they had an overall better sense of belonging, which also led to increased civic and community activity post sports. So, as these young ladies grew into young ladies and into adults, they would still feel that sense of belonging and they would want to participate and give back in their communities. So, why do we need a girls' wrestling program? Well, wrestling, like many other contact sports, is highly demanding, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, however, wrestling is one of only two contact sports that is co-ed, the other one being football, but again, the likelihood of that happening is much less than there is wrestling. Wrestling specifically presents many disadvantages for middle school girls to be successful and barriers for them to be successful as well. So the first one being presented by these two studies out of the European Journal of Human Movement and the Journal of Physical Education and Sport. One of the largest barriers after talking to these young ladies is that they have to wrestle boys. These girls do not want to wrestle boys. And their perception of the boys being bigger and stronger is 100% backed up by these two studies, where according to these two studies, the males have the advantage in muscular strength, like maximal muscular strength in comparison to their female peers. And these two studies noticed that within the weight classes, as the weight classes increased, so for example, went from 100 pounds to 110 pounds, 120 pounds, and so on and so on, that the gap between the two genders increased as the weights got heavier. So basically, the men and the boys were stronger, were already stronger than the girls, but as they got heavier, the gap between them grew, and they were even stronger and stronger and stronger as they continued to climb up the weights. And in fact, these studies noticed that as they got to the middle and heavier weight class and heavyweight classes, that the advantage nearly doubled in maximum output. So that is definitely a significant mismatch that we are looking at between boys and girls as far as muscular strength. The difference in muscular endurance in these two studies noted a distinct advantage to male wrestlers over their female peers in muscular endurance. And the same trend was also noted as the weight classes increased. The gap also increased for the advantage for the men during this study. Explosiveness and agility, the same two studies. There were some interesting things that happened with this where they noticed that explosiveness continued the same trend where the men had the advantage, and as the weights increased, the gap increased, and the men had an even greater advantage over the women. But agility did not grow at the same rate. If anything, it was just the same gap across all weight classes from men to women. So that wasn't as significant of a difference. However, it was still a difference nonetheless, and an advantage that the men once again had over the women. Differences in cardiovascular endurance, pulmonary system, and VO2 max. So this was a really interesting thing. I still kept the European Journal of Health of Human Movement, but I also had another journal entry from the European Respiratory Review with Pablo Dominelli and Yannick Mollet-Sion. And the one from Pablo, it was a very interesting article when he was describing the physiological differences between men and women and how that actually started to become much more pronounced from early childhood. And once puberty started, the difference between the boys and girls became more pronounced and then continued into adulthood, where men and adolescent boys, their lungs are larger and have an increased volume. They can hold more air and more oxygen than their female peers, which I thought was interesting. And I started asking the question, okay, does that necessarily lead to a difference in performance? That article from the European Respiratory Review didn't necessarily point to that. They did talk specifically about the structural differences, the shape of the lungs and of the rib cage and of the diaphragm, whereas the European Journal of Human Movement did point to a distinct advantage for the men, whereas the total VO2, so if you take basically the VO2 max and you put it into a pie, there's a 9% sliver of that pie that goes specifically to the pulmonary system, whereas for females, that slice of the pie is larger. It's 14% of their VO2 max is going toward their pulmonary system, and that again gives a 5% advantage to the men, which already enjoy an advantage, both muscular strength, agility, explosiveness, and endurance. Couple that with VO2 max, and right now the girls are striking out everywhere with these physical disadvantages. Now, this was interesting from this article from the Journal of Physical Education and Sport, where the girls did show better flexibility, and that can present an advantage for the girls, specifically when trying to get out of a pinning hold or not getting pinned, where I've actually seen girls have both knees on the mat and get pinned with both shoulders on the mat. I'm like, holy cow, how is that possible? And it's because they're way more flexible. Whereas a boy, there's no way that that's going to be happening. At least I haven't seen that in my personal experience. I know I can't bend that way, and I'm actually pretty flexible. Um, and I usually score really high on the presidential flexibility test, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, um, one thing with this increased flexibility that leads to a disadvantage with the girls is because of this increased flexibility with their muscles, it leaves their joints, their ligaments susceptible to injury. For example, knees and shoulders in wrestling tend to be one of the more higher risk things. Speaking of experience with both my shoulder and knee, um, with the shoulder, again, that is something that happened to me with my labrum. That was a ligament tear. These girls, they're very, very, very quick with their, specifically with the half Nelson, getting their shoulder wrenched that way, and it can be very, very quick because of the increased strength of the boys and also the increased flexibility of the girls. Where this is a double whammy for the girls, where there's a much greater risk due to this increased flexibility. Um, so, safety concerns of continued co ed wrestling. Like any other contact sport, there's a significant risk of injury football, wrestling, basketball, etc. Anybody can get hurt at any time. We're bumping, we're jostling, we're trying to get position. And that's specific when we're talking about evenly matched opponents that are of the same gender. For the last 5 slides, it's kind of becoming apparent that boys and girls, there is a distinct mismatch of physical abilities, both strength, endurance, agility, explosiveness, and flexibility, which originally might be thought as an advantage for the girls, but is now looking like it could be a disadvantage where it can lead to a risk of increased injury. And so I feel that we are looking at potential liability issues because we now know that, and continued co-ed wrestling could lead to an increase in liability because we know that there is a mismatch present. So safety continue with co-ed wrestling. I spoke with Rob Ververs on February 21st, 2025, and asked permission to use his professional opinion. Rob Ververs is a Colorado State wrestling official. He's part of the CWOA, and that's the Colorado Wrestling Officials Association. He's been a member and been officiating for over 34 years. He's actually the state rules interpreter. And I was talking to him during our league tournament on Friday, the 21st, about how he felt about girls wrestling. He likes the idea. He thinks it's great. The sport's growing. Great, great things. However, and this is actually a picture of him right there. I was able to get that. I was pretty excited about that. Anyways, what I was asking him, when he officiates girls, how does he feel? What's kind of going on with him? And he said he actually has to change his mentality about how he officiates girls because of their flexibility. When they're wrestling boys, due to the boys' strength and the girls' flexibility, things can get out of hand very quickly, and he's much more likely to call it potentially dangerous a lot faster with the girls than he is the boys. Now, that's great for safety. However, still can happen very, very, very fast because of the increased flexibility. And if we're having a seasoned veteran, a professional, a pros pro of Colorado wrestling officiating, and these are his observations and his feelings of refing of wrestling girls at the high school, middle school level over 30, 40 years, which again was probably not as prevalent as it is now. Obviously, we have high school girls wrestling, but he's nervous and he has to change his mentality. That's telling me that there's something going on there. There is a health and a safety concern with co-ed wrestling. Now, we're talking about a timeline of implementing girls wrestling. So, step 1 and 1A, meeting with you, Mr. Unright and Mr. Devlin. That's step 1. Hopefully, I do a good enough job to where we can go to 1A, where we talk to the school board and the superintendent with this. Hopefully, that happens, and we can continue on to step 2, which would be talking about reforming staff, the promotion of the program, and finding interest from other schools. Currently, we have 3 coaches on staff. I'm the head coach, obviously, and then we have Coach Smith as an assistant and Coach Blossom. She's my other assistant, which has been invaluable with this current increase with our female wrestlers, as she is a woman and has been able to go into the locker room and deal with issues and so on, and other issues that she is better equipped to handle than someone like myself or Coach Smith. So it has been wonderful to have her on staff, and I'm very, very fortunate and very grateful to have her on staff. However, I still think that if we were to split the 2 teams, I still think we need to have 3 boy coaches and an additional female assistant coach. Right now, there's no distinguishing between the 2. The reason why I'd like to have 3 coaches for the boys is that we have 50 plus boys, and we are going to essentially be splitting me in half to where I'm going to be part-time head coach for the girls and part head time for the boys. So we would still have 2.5 coaches watching the boys and then 1.5 coaches watching the girls. And then ultimately, this process, this first season would also be me also mentoring that girls assistant coach to eventually take over as the girls head coach, which I'll talk more about later. Now, something that I think is very exciting for girls wrestling is that I have done no promoting. I have not talked to girls. I have not encouraged girls. I have done nothing to get the numbers where they are today other than coaching them. And according to the high school girls coach and some of the other girls on the team, I was very standoffish and did not do the best job I could have done to encourage these girls and grow the program. Yet, despite of my efforts, the program is still growing. So I am hoping that through the promotion of girls wrestling and girls only wrestling, that the program will continue to grow, and we would go from 13 girls to 20 very quickly, 20 plus. Who knows? I don't know what the upper limit of this is going to be, and I'm very optimistic and very excited to see what that would look like. Now, we're talking about interest from other schools that's been brought up. I have a couple of examples of current interest right now. Wiggins has about 12 girls on the team. Yuma has 10. Brush has 2. Ray has 3. Roosevelt has so many girls, they host their own girls tournament. I know Windsor also is doing that, partnering with Severance. They do another tournament that we weren't able to go to. There are schools out there that have interest, but what they need now is coordination. And we have the opportunity to provide that to these schools moving forward. And I think that not only can we do that, but we can also champion this for these young ladies moving forward. Step 3 would be the first season. There would be very little structural change that would occur from this year, 2025, to the 2026 season. Practices would still be combined at the same time in the same wrestling room in the Ox Gym. And the only difference is that we would be looking at increased scaffolding from what we already are currently doing to moves that would be very specific to the girls. Specifically, talking to the girls' head coach at the high school, the way that I teach the half Nelson is a little bit dangerous for the girls due to their flexibility, and the likelihood of having potentially dangerous being called is, in her opinion, greater than what it currently is right now if we stay on the neck versus the back of the head like I teach for the boys at the elbow versus the armpit that she was teaching for the girls. And if you have other questions with that, I'd be happy to demonstrate that on you, but I can't do that right now by myself. And then we would also have dedicated staff for the girls right now. Yes, I have Coach Blossom on the team, but she doesn't just help the girls. She's also helping the boys, as we have. We are a co-ed team, and all of my coaches help whoever they need to help. And then we would not have any of the girls wrestling the boys. Currently, right now, I have 2 to 3 girls who will wrestle boys because they're at the same weight class or similar experience levels. However, there have been times where I've been like, okay, you're no longer partners with them during live. You can drill together, but you're not going to wrestle live together because those boys, Yes, they might be a similar experience level. I've seen them kind of like swing around. I'm like, whoa, whoa, careful, careful, kind of instances like that. So again, continued separation of the boys and girls there, continued scaffolding, specific drills, and also just kind of uh, specific planning for the girls to where they're that would definitely be in their wheelhouse when it comes to experience, strength, flexibility, and then prioritize safety and the success of the girls at that level. Step four, we're looking at seasons 2 through 4. And again, when I say seasons, it's just all just kind of dependent on what the popularity of the program is doing. Is it staying at 13? Has it gotten over 20? Are we pushing 30? I don't know. The more girls that we have, the quicker this potentially needs to go. So as the girls program continues to grow, which again, I feel like it's going to, um, as of the 2023-2024 school year, girls wrestling at the high school level doubled in size. It went from like 32,000 to over 64,000 the following year nationwide. And like I said, it's the fastest girl sport in the country. And so moving forward, this is definitely something I think is going to continue to grow. I haven't been promoting it. I think it's going to happen pretty quick, which is exciting, but also kind of scary. Um, like I was saying, as both programs continue to grow, and for the sake of safety, we will eventually need to split the programs where we have, and again, this is the number that I'm kind of have in my head and what I've been seeing as we've been flirting with 70 wrestlers on the mat at one time. Um, and right now, like the boys' numbers are kind of coming down a little bit, whereas the girl numbers are kind of exploding right now, as that we've doubled the last 2 years in a row the number of girls, and I'm kind of curious to see what next year looks like. Anyways, right now we have 13 girls and about 52 boys. Like I'm saying, we've had more than that over the course of the season. This is what we finished with, and I've had over 70 last year, and I had 70 this year, and things just continue to get bigger and bigger. Um, And I definitely think that once we crack that number 70, like I said, we'll split the numbers. The girls and boys will practice. They'll take turns, one practicing before school, one practicing after school. And that'll be something that we will continue to monitor and evaluate as we move on and the girls and boys programs continue to grow over the next several years. And again, it'll also depend on what the availability of the girls coaches are. I know currently at the high school, the girls coaches are not available after school, so they are exclusively practicing before school. I don't know what things will look like with the girls staff moving forward, if that will be something they want to do, or if they want to alternate weeks before and after school. We'll just kind of play it by ear again. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what that'll look like, but this is one potential solution for that. And then as things continue to grow and more interest happens throughout the state and around us regionally, um, I do think girls wrestling is going to really take a foothold. Like I've quoted this article several times already during this presentation, and I have it written out as I'm quoting it here. The NFHS in 2024 came out with that study saying that girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport in the country. And with that continued growth, I feel like there's going to be continued competition between girls wrestling and girls basketball. As of right now, in our current schedule, we do not have a girls only program or two girls only programs competing directly with one another. But if we have a girls only program, there will be direct competition. And as girls wrestling continues to grow, whether we continue with co ed or not, there is going to be increased competition. Whereas this year, I saw that firsthand, where I had one girl quit wrestling because she was doing both boys, or she was doing both the girls wrestling with her program that was co-ed and girls basketball, where she was practicing before school and after school. And as they alternated, she was having some conflicts, and she had to ultimately make a decision, which was kind of sad because the boys don't have to do that, where the girls, unfortunately, as of right now, do. Now, moving forward, And seasons 3 through 5, and again, who knows what the popularity will look like as things get more popular. This might have to be the direction we go in. Eventually, moving the girls wrestling program to the second quarter. What that would mean is that it would no longer have the girls basketball program and the girls wrestling program compete for participants, and they would be on their own different seasons, independent from one another, which would allow both programs to continue to grow, which again is what we want because we want to have increased athletic participation school wide and specifically with our young ladies. And by allowing the girls wrestling program to take place in the second quarter, where there's currently no girls sport taking place, we now have no more competition where we have two girls sports taking place during the third quarter. Step 6, additional space, and this would be 2020. This would be 2030 and beyond. Again, this is kind of pie in the sky potential stuff that we would be looking at. Is this a realistic thing? I don't know, but again, we have some time to explore that and to investigate it and see if there's any grant monies or anything like that available for it. And that's a whole other conversation for a later day. However, this would, I think, help alleviate some of the concerns about moving the girls to the second quarter because, again, I am very much aware of having to roll up my mats every week. And then also during times where we have girls' basketball games happening in both gyms, where I have to roll the mats up more than once a week or whatever. I am fully aware how much limited space we currently have. And so if this continues with this popularity with girls wrestling, we move it to the second quarter. We are looking at the girls wrestling program competing with the boys basketball program for gym space because the wrestling program currently has practice in the auxiliary gym, which also presents another problem of wrestling, boys and girls, taking up nearly half the school year away from the PE teachers and limiting the PE curriculum at Fort Morgan Middle School. So that is something why I definitely think we need to take, if we are able to move the girls to the second quarter, we also need to investigate creating an additional space for wrestling as the program grows and blossoms into what we hopefully will see in the future. Bottom line, and again, I understand money doesn't grow on trees, that there's only so much money in the budget and everything else. So I was very mindful and conscientious of this, and that's also why I, as the head coach, would not be taking an additional stipend despite being the head coach of two separate programs. I would just continue on with the stipend that I currently have, and I wouldn't expect or want an additional stipend, whether it's a full stipend, half stipend. I don't care. I want this program to continue on and grow, and then we'll see what things look like down the road, and we'll get into that here in a second. But most of the money that will be spent on the program will be in transportation and an additional coaching stipend. I'm fully aware of that. That coaching stipend is an assistant coach for the girls program. The money that I saw that I was able to kind of figure out that we're currently spending with the boys program, we got about $255 that is being spent on supplies such as mat tape, cleaning supplies, and other med kit supplies, Band-Aids, athletic tape, etc. And I'm not going to, and I'm excluding a potential for a new building because I don't even know what that would even look like. Yeah, that's just out of my scope and above my pay grade. And that's something for a whole other thing. And yeah. So what I am currently projecting for the first year of girls wrestling would be an increase of $4,592.52 to $5,402.50. Again, these are rough estimates based on what we're currently seeing as of right now. This includes mileage fees, bus driver fees, which is anywhere between $22 to $27 an hour. I did averages of 7.5 hours per trip and 5 tournaments for the first year. And then also that additional coaching stipend, and then also what registration fees would be as well. So that's where I got those numbers from. I will also be attaching what that'll look like on a specific handout later. And then as of 2030, these are what I'm projecting as what the total cost of the program will be. Again, it won't be a 1 year huge jump of $16,002. That'll be over the course of the next 5 years. It will eventually get to a total cost of the district of $16,002 per year. And again, that's with 2 coaching stipends happening. It's going to be a separate season in the second quarter. So again, obviously 2 different coaching stipends. We will have to have additional mat tape, athletic tape, and other med kit supplies, as well as cleaning supplies to clean the mats. A lot of the stuff we can also share with the boys, but eventually the girls will need to have their own uniforms as far as the specific cut of singlet, where it's a higher cut. It's a higher cut around the collar as well, where it's not as low. Currently, right now, we have worked around that problem with compression shirts that the girls wear underneath the singlets, because all I have right now are the boys' cuts of singlets. There are different singlets. There's a girls' cut and a boys' cut of the singlet. Like I already mentioned, that are higher up in the armpits for the girls and higher up around the chest and neck area, which is great, keeping the modesty, which is kind of hard to do already with the singlet being so tight. So that's where that $16,000 is coming from, is 2 coaching stipends, transportation, and increased schedule from 5 meets to 8, and then uniforms as well, which was, I think, anywhere between a little bit over $1,000 to like 3,300 or something like that. I have the numbers are on that handout that I'll be giving you guys as well. And according to our school district budget audit that was conducted at the end of the 2024, our school district budget, we spent a little bit over $26 million, and our budget was a little bit over $27 million is what we brought in. And by adding this girls wrestling program, this would increase the budget from 2024 to 2026. It would increase it by 0.02% the first year, and then that 5th or 6th season, we would be looking at an increase from this current year to that year of 0.62% of the current 2024 budget. And I did the math several times because I was like, there's no way it's that low, it's small of a percentage, but it definitely is. I did it multiple times on my calculator, and then I asked Google, unless my math is way wrong. That's what I'm finding, and I was, like I said, surprised by how little of the pie it was asking for. With that being said, let's circle back to the opportunities that we currently have for our young ladies at Fort Morgan Middle School. So in red, that's what we currently have. We have 106 opportunities for varsity spots for the boys. The girls currently have 80 opportunities. Like I said earlier, 75.4% of the boys. With the addition of girls wrestling, that's a potential of 21 additional varsity spots. That would bring the total for the boys, still would stay at 106 varsity opportunities. The girls would now be 101 varsity opportunities. That means the girls would be 95% of what the boys currently enjoy. That's an increase of 20% participation. And that would only be asking 0.25% to 0.8% of the current budget. In my opinion, it's worth it. I hope through the benefits that these girls will be able to enjoy and be able to give back to this community for the sake of the safety of these girls and the increased participation and removal of barriers for these girls, we can all agree that we need to create a girls wrestling program. Now, here are my sources. As you can see, it just was a lot of time and energy and effort, and this is both a personal. Um, this is very important to me personally, as it is professionally, as I do coach these young ladies. Um, I see the heartbreak when they lose. I see um, the joy that they feel when they win, especially those two young ladies who were able to place for the first time ever in the history of our school at the league tournament. It was really cool watching them win and cry, and I was able to share that with them, and then be able to potentially share that with my daughters as well. Not only my son, is just something that I feel is very important for us to look into and explore and pursue and champion for these young ladies moving forward. I hope this made sense. I hope you understand where I'm coming from, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.